You should be able to see my screen now. Okay, cool. Can you still see my screen? Okay, let's say that you can still see my screen. So hello everyone. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the feedback, Olga. Hello everyone. Very happy to be part of this discussion this afternoon and for the next one too. Today the discussion is about like environmental sustainability and digital health. And because we were introducing ourselves, a small background. So I have a background in sports science and psychology. I got a PhD in human movement science in France. I did a postdoc in the e-health sector in California. And now I am an assistant research professor in a public health institute called the Barcelona Institute for Global Health. And I'm coordinating the e-health group as part of this position. First, short disclaimer before starting the talk. I am not an expert and I don't do any research about energy and resource scarcity, but I'm still able to read reports and articles on that domain. So I will like provide some good references for that, but still I'm not engaged actively in that kind of research. And something which is important too, like to keep in mind, is that most of the sources that I will mention this talk are for the global ICT, so for information and communication technology sector, and not always specific to the health, to the digital health sector. So it's important because we don't have so much information about health. So most of the time it's more like global information about the ICT sector. The talk of today is based on the report made by a couple of French engineers working for the SHIFT project, which is a carbon transition think tank in France. And they produce a report called Lean ICT Towards Digital Sobriety in March 2019, and basically at that time I was doing my postdoc in the digital health sector, and I thought it would be very important to communicate the result of this report to the digital health community. So I started to work on kind of adaptation, dissemination of the result from this report for the digital health community. And we wrote a small commentary with some colleagues that are mentioned here on the screenshot, and notably Olga and David that were part of this initiative, and a small commentary that we published in the Lancet Digital Health. So my talk today is based on these two main references. I just would like to start with the name, the word Anthropocene, because sometimes it's not clear for everybody. So Anthropocene has been defined as the new geological epoch, recognizing the effect of humanity on geology and ecology. And it's better to show you directly a picture of what means the Anthropocene. So the Anthropocene is the acceleration in a lot of consumption post-World War II, such as a lot of outcomes in general, but such as population, GDP, primary energy use, foreign direct investment, and a lot of indicators. So an acceleration of the world, an acceleration of our economy, and also an acceleration of pollution, and an acceleration of greenhouse gas production, and all the things that come with. So it's important because we can observe the same kind of acceleration these past months and years in the digital health sector. So in the digital sector, again, in general, and the digital health notably. So an increased production and utilization of smartphone, the multiplication of smart objects, the rise of the Internet of Things, and that comes with all these things, the explosion in data traffic and storage, because obviously with all these new devices in our everyday life, we are increasing a lot the data traffic and the needs to store and to analyze this data. So we are really in this mindset right now of accelerating everything, accelerating this, accelerating that, accelerating digital health. So this is really part of the Anthropocene mindset, I will say. So here, more specific to the energy consumed by the communication technology, you have some scenarios that have been developed originally by Andrae and Edler. So it's the paper on the top right. And then that has been updated in 2019 by the Shift project. And basically here you have like the evolution of global energy consumption, digital energy consumption, in proportion of total world energy consumption. And we can see that basically we are following like increasing, and maybe not always exponential, but like very steep increase in the energy consumption by the digital and the information and communication sector worldwide. Just a short note on that. We can think that this changed a bit with the COVID-19 pandemic, and actually it did change in the first months of the pandemic. But then everything came back at the normal. And here you have a recent report saying that at the end of the year, so 2020, there were a recovery of electricity demand above the 2019. So even if we observe like a short drop with the COVID-19, basically we are increasing our electricity consumption worldwide in a quite stable manner. So here it's an important point, because a lot of researchers, a lot of people, and especially like economists are really happy with continuous growth, exponential or not exponential. And it's actually in economy, for example, there is few models speaking about like degrowth, and we are always assuming that we will observe growth in the economy. But for other types of researcher, notably like researcher in dynamical system engineering, constant and continuous growth, it's absolutely not something that could be like sustainable and that could be sustained and just sustained in any natural system. And there is different way of thinking a post-growth world. Either we could attain a kind of sigmoid approach, so to attain a kind of equilibrium. So after a period of growth, we could just start to equilibrate the system. We can have some small overshoot. So for example, if we have like a several COVID-19 pandemic and then attain progressively an equilibrium. And there is also like a lot of scenarios about collapse and that follow a period of expansion and continuous growth. So just to say that we know today that this Anthropocene period and this acceleration in everything is probably not really a good news in terms of health, notably. And I just want to highlight here that actually it's not really okay to observe such acceleration in everything, and it's something that we should care about. So it was for the Anthropocene. Now I will switch directly to the conclusion of the report I introduced just before from the Shift project. And the conclusion of this report is the following one: the current trend for digital consumption in the world is not sustainable with respect to two things: the supply of energy and the materials it requires. And system-wide action are necessary to deal with the negative impact of the digital consumption. So we will go through these 2 points, the energy and the materials one. So basically, in terms of energy demand, it's quite easy to understand. The more we are using ICT and digital technology, the more we are consuming energy. And today, the production and utilization of digital technology is exponentially growing, thus consuming a gradually increasing part of the available electricity worldwide, and ultimately generating more greenhouse gas to produce this energy. So it's something that we know. I think there is not so much debate about this fact. But what we can see sometimes in the literature or in the news is that this is fine to increase this energy, because actually we will cover it with renewable energy, and the digitalization sector in general is less carbon intensive than other activity. So I just want to deconstruct a bit these beliefs, because it's not really exact. So in terms of renewable, I think it's important to show this graph, and I'm not sure if you are familiar with this kind of graph. So here you have the global energy consumption by source in the world. And as you can see, there is in 2019, but it's approximately the same proportion today, 84% of the global energy worldwide that come from fossil fuel. So traditional biomass like wood, coal, oil, and gas. And then you have some energy coming from nuclear and hydropower. And at the top of the graph, you have the renewables energy that we can produce today. So I think it's important to have in mind that the proportion of energy we can produce today with renewable is very small. So it doesn't make sense to say that we will be able to cover all the increasing needs in energy for the digital sector just with renewable. Some other things that we are listening into the media is about energy efficiency. So there is a belief that basically we can improve energy efficiency in a continuous way, meaning that we can do the same thing with less energy, which is in part true, but there is something called the rebound effect that is killing all efficiency efforts in these past years. And the rebound effect is describes how the improvement in the energy efficiency for a particular object usually leads to a decline, but on the contrary, to an increase in the overall energy consumption. So let me give you like a very easy example. One that I like is about car sharing system. So we saw that by organizing a bit this system and being able to provide like more carpooling services, people will share their car, and that we will make some like improvement into our consumption of oil. And actually, it's not what happened, because with this improvement in carpooling, going to a place to another became cheaper, and actually we just got more people on the road. And this is an example of the rebound effect. At the beginning, it was a good idea, but because we improved the efficiency, we just use it to produce even more, in this case, transportation. And here you have also, like on the left, some primary energy consumption by source in the world over time. And as you can see, there is a lot of example. Actually, for example, Germany is a good example for that. In a lot of countries, they develop their sources of renewable energy. So it means that they produce more energy with renewable sources, but at the same time, they did not decrease the oil, coal, or gas consumption. So it means that they are not shifting from one type of energy to another, but they are just additioning the energy sources. So it's very important to have these two things in mind in terms of like energy demand for the digital health sector and digital sector in general. One more thing that we can sometimes see in the media again is that locally we are able to do it. We are able to do some good stuff in terms of efficiency, and notably, for example, in Europe. So it's quite true when you look at this graph. For example, the energy consumption by source in Europe, we are able to decrease a bit the source from non-renewable energy toward more renewable energy. But when you look at it at the global scale, it seems that we are just delocalizing pollution. So for example, when you check the primary energy consumption of China, you can see that around 1990 or 2000, there is a big increase in energy consumption by China. And actually, it's mainly because we just delocalizing a lot of our industries there. And today, you know, like me, that all the digital devices that we are using are produced there in China. And it's not surprising to see like a big increase in their energy consumption. And in this case, not a renewable one. So it's important, again, to think at the global scale and not to fall into this trap of thinking locally, but with something which should not always be thinking locally. If you want to see like a very concrete example of this delocalization, I recommend this French documentary made by Guillaume Pitron on the right, who is a filmmaker. And I found an interview in English on internet, but I think there is this documentary on internet with subtitles. So basically, Guillaume Pitron went to different places where like rare earths or all the materials that we need to build digital services, and also like renewables energy, such as like solar panels or wind generators are produced. And it's interesting to see in which condition it is produced. And it's interesting to see that it's not as green as we could think. So here I'm not arguing against renewables energy. It's not the point. I'm just saying that with our current rate of energy consumption, and especially the fact that we are just increasing over a year our energy consumption, it doesn't make a lot of sense to think about renewable energy without questioning our needs in terms of energy. And if you want to see this thing very concretely, this documentary is very interesting. So as I told you, there is two things coming with the sustainability and absence of sustainability of the digital system. It's energy demands. So we saw that in the past slides. And it's also about the materials it requires to build the devices, the digital devices, and also the system to be able to use these digital devices. Here there is two things about the materials. There is something about pollution and some things about resources scarcity. So in terms of pollutions, we have to keep in mind that all digital devices needs very heavy industrial process, and the extraction of the metals, which is the basis of almost all our devices, is a key source of greenhouse gas pollution and also like soil pollution. Particularly also because most of our devices and the metals that they contain are not yet recycled. So you have some very good example. For example, in Ghana, there is a report here talking about how in Europe, because we are not recycling all our old computer, all our old smartphone, and all these all digital things, we are just throwing them in some countries in Africa. The Ghana again is a very good example. And there, some workers burn the plastic to remove the metals that are inside this plastic. And this is causing obviously a lot of environmental health issues for the workers and for the places where this practices is developed. The other problem with the materials that we need to build the digital services is not about pollution, but resources scarcity. So something which is important is to keep in mind that most of the metals, and especially like the rare earths, that we need for the digital systems are either produced in conflicted zone or controlled by a single monopolistic entity. And this creates a lot of fragility, not only at the environmental level, but also in the capacity to just access and continue to build all these devices using all these metals. So to give you a concrete example again, I went checking from the importation in metals from the US in 2019, and as you can see, like for the rare earths, for example, 100% of the metals in the US are imported here, in this case from most of them from China. And don't be surprised then when you see that this kind of things is a strong element in terms of like the political wars that could be made between these countries, because basically in the digital sector you can't move forward without rare earths. So here it means that the US can't move forward without China in this domain. In a more local spaces, there is some journalistic reports saying that a lot of our devices are generating child labor and labor in very hard condition. So here, for example, it's in Congo for metals called cobalt, who is very important in digital devices. And we have some example of lawsuit for Apple and Google for case of child labor to build all this stuff about like digital devices. So here again, the conclusion, current trend of digital consumption not sustainable in terms of both energy and materials, as we just see that. So what to do? I have a double answer. I have an answer in the health sector, and I have an answer which is more global. So to begin with the health sector, the first principle we developed into the paper we published, the commentary in the Lancet Digital Health, is to promote digital temperance instead of overconsumption and overpromotion. So we could think that because we are working in the health sector, we should be first comparing to other sectors, such as like the advertisement one, for example, which is obviously way less important than the health sector. But still, the consumption is so important that we will probably need, even in like good utilization of digital devices, to reduce our utilization in the next year and to slow down in this domain. So here you have, for example, something around the Paris Agreement with our like current with the current trend in terms of digital consumption. We will never achieve the Paris Agreement. Like the two are mathematically not compatible. And something which is important also in terms of slowing down is that the digital consumption worldwide is highly polarized. So the overconsumption is not a global problem. It's caused by high-income countries. So here, for example, on your left, you can see that it was an estimation from the Shift project. In 2018, an average American owns 10 digitally connected devices and consume 140 gigabytes of data monthly, while an average Indian only owns one device and consumes 2 gigabytes monthly. So it means that we will have to slow down. And it also means that we'll have to slow down to let some opportunities for other countries to develop. So we need to slow down because it's not sustainable. And we also need to slow down because like we have folks in the low and middle income countries that have to improve a bit their digital services. So we need to share all this energy and materials more normally in the next year. Something we said into the Lancet Digital Health commentary is that basically environmental outcomes should be considered as a decision criteria before funding or deploying large-scale digital health initiative. So in a perfect world, it will be the case. And this should be taught and communicated to our audiences. So sometimes we are like very enthusiastic about digital technology, but especially because we are caring of health, I think we are in a big cognitive dissonance to promote digital devices too much without considering all these things. So we need to communicate differently in the digital health domain about this environmental lack of sustainability. The second principle that we develop in the commentary is about life cycle instead of waste. So a lot of improvement could be made, could be done in the sustainability of the digital health devices and how they are made, basically. So here, for example, we have a company called Fairphone, which is an interesting one because they are trying to produce like a longer lasting smartphone that are easy to repair and incorporate responsibly sourced material. So I hope that maybe in the next years, we will have like some options for that, for like, let's say Fitbit or all these connected devices that could be interesting for our utilization in the health domain. Again, this is complicated in the trend right now because in Western Europe, we are changing our smartphone every 3 years because there is a lot of marketing things around that. It's even more in the US and it's even more for Apple users. So again, this second principle of life cycle is valid only if we check the first principle, which is about slowing down. There is some interesting initiative in the health domain, which is about like pooling and sharing resources. For example, here it's a screenshot from a website called Recycle Health. So this is an initiative led by Lisa Gualtieri in Boston, and basically she's trying to give a second life to old Fitbits or any kind of digital devices to not have these things just throw away, but that could like be useful for other projects and other populations. The third principle is about complexity instead of reductivism. Here, the point is that this is very complex. Sometimes we are doing some progress in one outcome, but we are like we are not progressing for another. So it means that we need a very complex mindset. We need to evaluate like all the different parts of the system when we are like moving forward with the digital things. And one interesting case of this complexity is telemedicine. So you can see in this two editorial that the first one is claiming that telemedicine is green, and the second one is telling that it depends because of rebound effect and because of a lot of factors. So always important to think like in an interdisciplinary and cross-sector approach to balance maybe the impact in terms of health, but also the impact in terms of environmental issues. So it's just what I said before. What to do all sector conference, because I just present some stuff that was related to the health sector. I do like this relatively recent article wrote by a French researcher, Fabrice Flippo. And basically, the conclusion of this article is about what should be done about this increasing consumption in the digital trend. And he said exactly the opposite of what the industry is planning. So I think it's interesting because basically it's banning 8K, reserving AI for very restricted use with a strong social and environmental utility, not deploying 5G on the large scale. And I also like the last advice, just waking up about like the gap between what we think we can do in the digital sector and what we can actually sustain in the environmental one. As a conclusion, 3 points. So it's probably sure that the current consumption of digital services is not sustainable in terms of energy and materials, even if you will see some articles and some experts saying that it is. We have very few time left to cut our GHG emissions. And as I told you, the main thing is about slowing down. It's not about doing differently. It's really about slowing down and sharing more the resources globally. Some stuff to go further on this topic. The book on the left is written by an engineer, a French engineer, The Age of Low Tech. It has been a game changer for me when I was doing my postdoc in San Diego. So very, very interesting book, highly recommended. There is some interesting things also about this concept of slow tech by Noberto Patrignani. Sorry for the pronunciation. And I also recommend the website from the Shift project. There is a lot of resources in English, and it's kind of a blog, and you can find a lot of timely stuff on this website. And it's finished.
Great, thanks so much, Guillaume. I'm gonna stop the recording.